So there are so many teachers that made a difference in my life, and it's hard to pick just one. So I'm going to cheat and go with three. There were three teachers that were incredibly highly influential, and they all taught me incredibly important lessons that I use every day in my life as a dean, in my life as a professor, in my life as a parent, and as a wife and a person. And the first person was Carolyn Holmachek, who was my 7th and 8th grade English teacher. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I was often the only black kid in my honors classes. Tracking was used in my school system, and I was often the only black kid in a very, very highly integrated and diverse, racially diverse school. And Carolyn Holmachek was a middle-aged white woman who was a phenomenal English teacher. She taught me a lot about grammar and diagramming, and I just love her class. She really enabled me to love language and love writing, and I use those tools every day in my job. But the most important lesson that I think that she taught me is that she taught me really that white people have a responsibility to challenge racism, and she was really the first example I saw of someone using that tool every day in class. And I remember even the first moment that I saw her do it, being the only black kid often in my class. People would sometimes say comments, we're reading books or reading stories that involve black people, and you kind of look back or to tell an anecdote that sometimes wasn't so relevant, and she would kind of stop them. And I'd never seen a teacher do this and say, "What does that have to do with the story?" And she would make them think through things in a way, and I thought it was really, really amazing. And I see there are law professors who worry and stress about challenging students and asking them the kinds of questions that I think that she was an expert at doing in 7th and 8th grade. My second teacher was really an informal teacher. It was a track coach named Dean Johnson, and he was an informal track coach. He wasn't actually a track coach. I grew up in apartment complexes in Houston, Texas, low-income apartment complexes, and Dean Johnson was an African-American man who was really a saint. He, on his own time, with his own resources, would go out and he would really mentor young kids and take them out and teaching them things about track and really just keeping people off the streets and keeping them busy and showing them the different tools about leadership and trying and how do you grow from failure. And I learned all those lessons from Dean Johnson, and I learned how to mentor from Dean Johnson. And I think looking back as an adult, I appreciate everything that he did for us. Never out of any glory, he never got thank yous. I never said thank you. I never thought to do so until I was too old and it was too late, and just did it because he wanted to help children, and he wanted young black children to have opportunities. And so really, really phenomenal man, and I learned a lot of lessons from him. And the final teacher would be my college professor, Kierscht, who I remember before I ever even thought of myself as a potential professor, seeing her, and it was the first time I'd had a black college professor, and just seeing her teach and the way that the different approaches she would take and the different questions she would raise and the different viewpoints she would raise, which were kind of the things that I was always thinking but that weren't always raised in classes. And I thought, boy, I want to be like her. And it just gave me a sense that I could belong in academia. And so she was really the first professor who not only taught me so much about all sociology and American studies, but she was also the first professor who really showed me that I could be in academia as well.